You're listening to the Just Press Pause podcast with Andrew Kozak.
Welcome to the first episode of the Just Press Pause podcast. I'm Andrew Kozak, and I appreciate you joining me as I launch sort of a passion project of mine. You know, anybody with a microphone and a computer can start a podcast. I just haven't had the time with work, but now with the pandemic, coronavirus, that's what we're doing as we record this. We're in the midst of being sheltered in place, quarantined, however you want to call it, staying at home. It gives me a little bit more time to work on this. Episode 1 is called Stability and Instability. Every podcast is going to start with a title and a weather, or as I call it, water cooler weather topic. And today, when it comes to meteorology, it's going to be called Stability and Instability. So I'll talk a little bit about that, maybe something you don't know, maybe something you did know, and then how that ties in with our guest, because it's not just about me. Every episode will have a guest joining me or guests joining me. Obviously, in the beginning right now, it's via Skype because, well, we just can't be near each other at all. In the meantime, a little bit about myself. I'm a meteorologist from New York City, Staten Island to be exact. I grew up watching The Wizard of Oz, which didn't really interest me once the color kicked in. I didn't care about Munchkin Land, didn't care about the witch. It was just the black and white part with that tornado. And still to this day, when that movie was made in 1939, still to this day, I think the best example of a tornado ever caught on film. There weren't computers, there weren't special effects. It just looked really, really good. And it interests me. So I had my parents bring me to the library. That's all I ever wanted to talk about was tornadoes and severe weather. I even convinced my 5th grade teacher to do a weather segment, which wasn't planned. And he did. He put something together real quick for the class. It was a really good way for me to kind of get my feet wet. And I'm talking about an internship when I was in college at WABC in New York. After that, I realized you just cannot go and start in television in New York City. So I was in Casper, Wyoming. My career so far, which has spanned 16 years, has taken me to Wichita, Tulsa, 2 stations, Memphis, Tennessee, and now Columbus, Ohio. Now, while I was in Tulsa, I had the opportunity to host Good Day Tulsa, which was not just weather. I did the weather early in the morning, but it was an interview show. I got to interview celebrities. I got to do cooking segments. It was really fun, and I kind of got the interview bug, and that's where this project sort of came from. So we're going to tie in weather with interviews and interesting people that may have to do with either current events or something going on in the community. And of course, with what's going on now, it's coronavirus. So let's talk about today's topic. Water cooler weather begins right now. All right, so stable and unstable air, or stability and instability. We talk about that so much. You know, weather is just strongly affected by how stable or unstable the atmosphere is. Stable air means that the weather's likely to be calm. That sounds pretty self-explanatory, right? You might have some sun mixed with a few sun showers, or if it's the wintertime, a few snow showers. But overall, the weather that doesn't change quickly, it's pretty stable. We have time to kind of take a breather and relax while we wait for our next system. That next system could bring in instability or unstable air. Unstable air means the weather might change very quickly with little warning, especially in this part of the country and in a large part of the country with thunderstorms and cold fronts and tornadoes and severe weather. Unstable air leads to sudden thunderstorms. So what makes the atmosphere stable or unstable? Because there's a bunch of factors with that. Well, picture an invisible box of air called an air parcel. If we compare the temperature of this air parcel to the temperature of the air surrounding it, we can tell if it's stable or unstable. So if it's stable air, the air that's rising is colder than the air surrounding it, that parcel. So it sinks. Sinking air, high pressure. A lot of times when you see that big blue H, or on a weather map that a meteorologist is showing you, it's just sinking air. It's nice. It's sunny outside. The weather's not bad. But it's the opposite that causes instability. And when that air parcel rises and continues to rise, well, then you start to form thunderstorms. That's what low pressure is. It's that rising of the air. And sometimes that air direction, the wind direction, comes in from the south or southwest. In Ohio, and in especially the Ohio Valley and the Mid-South and the Deep South, that air that comes in from the south, that grabs moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. So that adds fuel to the fire. So the last point about this is what causes that air parcel to rise? Well, what causes the instability? Believe it or not, sunshine is a huge factor. So a lot of times if you see the meteorologist, myself or somebody else on television talking about a cold front coming through and there's sunshine in the morning, that's not a good thing. We want clouds in the morning. We want maybe some showers in the morning. We don't want severe weather, but we want anything to enable more stability. And if you have sunshine, it's almost like the atmosphere gets cooked. It helps to lift that parcel of air, and that lifts high enough. You get enough of that wind, enough of that juice and the moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, especially in this part of the country, and you get thunderstorms. And that's the difference between stability and instability. So again, if you're on my YouTube page watching that here, or if you're watching that on Facebook, there'll be, especially for the kids that might be watching, or anybody that might want to give a little weather lesson, I'll have that there. And of course, stability and instability, well, that also takes into account not just weather, but what's going on with us right now as a society. Joining me right now is Dr. Stephanie Melka, who is an OBGYN. And while she doesn't directly deal with rehabilitating and helping people coming down with COVID-19, she also has to factor this into really her daily routine. Melka, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
So I'm going to call you Melka. You said that's okay, right?
You've known me since I was 13. I think we're beyond formalities at this point.
So Melka, did you know that? Did you know anything about stability, instability when it comes to weather? Have you heard those terms before?
I have. I don't feel like you can ever watch weather without hearing it.
Yeah.
But your explanation was great. It made a lot of sense. And now I'm sort of thinking back to all those nice mornings where we look out the window and we're like, oh, the weather's great. We'll go out later.
Yeah.
And then it's boring.
I remember I was in, I think it was Wichita. And Wichita was like my first taste of severe weather. I mean, obviously you're in Tornado Alley. And I was home in Staten Island, and I don't remember what I was playing with the dog or something. And my mom looks out the window and she goes, oh, looks like it's going to be a nice day. Now I knew there was going to be thunderstorms coming through New York. We actually had severe thunderstorm warning that day for Richmond County, which doesn't happen very often. And I go, no, Mom, this isn't good. This isn't good. And, she didn't know. And I explained to her stability and stability and, the sun cooks the atmosphere. But, I thought it was a good theme because stability and stability is not just when it comes to weather. We talk about, relationships. We talk about just everything going on in our lives. And I think when it comes to even somebody in your field, the medical field, I mean, right now, for you and for everybody kind of all together, we're trying to balance that stability and instability, right?
Yeah. I mentioned this before, but from where we were a month ago till now, things have changed so much, so rapidly, that, it's been, like I said, it's been hard to predict. It's amazing looking at what we were doing 3 weeks ago till now. When we started in our practice trying to make changes to decrease traffic, have fewer people coming in, spacing out visits. Like with any change, you do your best to predict, and then you don't know what's going to happen until you actually do it. So we would make a certain change, and then in a day we would say, oh, here are the good things that worked, here are the bad things that we need to fix, and then changing. And it sort of all keeps, cascading from there, so to speak.
I think it's almost like the what I call the factor, like cooking the atmosphere, the sunshine that really helps to make things unstable. That's sort of what the virus is and what the situation is. I would think for you guys, it's just because it just makes things unstable. You don't know if it's going to become that supercell thunderstorm or the, rain shower run of the mill.
Yeah. And I think, being in the type of practice that I'm in, where we're busy, we're doing a lot of deliveries, we have a lot of complicated high risk issues, we're always on our toes. You and I the other day spoke for a little bit, and I'd said like, oh, my day looks pretty easy. I had time, and then 2 hours later, we had 2 women who needed emergency surgeries.
Oh, wow.
So in general, being an obstetrician, you're sort of used to things changing pretty quickly. And I think that perspective has really helped us with this as well. I've been lucky. I'm in a wonderful practice. Everyone has been great about all of these changes. And, I think we all understand that you can predict, you can think of what's going to happen and try and make, a best guess as to how to deal with things, but then also be able to work as a team and work on the fly, where if something happens totally out of nowhere that you didn't predict,
right,
to then, kind of come together and say, okay, now how can we fix this? How do we deal with this problem? How do we move ahead, trying to avoid that from happening again?
Well, and, you guys will always have, as I'm sure issues come up. I mean, you've had probably unforeseen and unexpected issues happen on almost a daily basis before COVID-19 and the coronavirus. But now this throws like an entire wrench into your what to expect. I'm sure you wake up every day not knowing what to expect normally, and now it's just probably tenfold.
Yeah. Early on when I started, if I was on call for the day, you wake up, I look at my email, see what happened overnight, look at the hospital list, see who's admitted. And then there are some days I would say like, oh, there's nobody in labor. Great. What a great call. And then
Right.
5 hours later, you suddenly have 6 people and you're up all night. So I've, stopped doing that,
Yeah.
where I go into work, and even if I'm in the office where it's relatively predictable, things change. We get complications. Patients are late. Doctors are late. We're sort of always moving things around.
It's so interesting because we sort of got thrusted into this. I think, January, February, we started hearing about other countries. Then, of course, the cruise ships that were, deciding if they were going to be docked or not. And then it just seems like wham, the news conferences started and the shelter in place, and it just kind of hit us very, very quickly where we had to step back for a second and think, I mean, here we are. This is reality. How do you in the hospital prepare for something like that? Is this something that when you went to medical school and you were a resident, are these things that you, prepare for or they tell you about, but you don't, think that it ever becomes reality?
Not at all. This is pretty unprecedented in anybody I work with. The closest comparison I have in the 8 years I've been with my practice now, in New York City, there was an outbreak of measles, I think, a year or two ago. That was relatively easy in terms of navigating because we have a readily available test for immunity.
Mm-hmm.
So we could, easily screen women to see, are you immune, are you not immune, and then sort of help guide people from there. If you're not immune, how to really reduce your risk. The difference here is we don't have that test. A lot of people were vaccinated against measles as a kid. We don't, the opposite with coronavirus. It's very contagious. You're at a very high risk of getting it if you're exposed. And the disease course of people who get sick it can be variable.
But you're not dealing with it every day.
We're in a little bit of a different scenario. Someone working in an emergency room or an ICU, they're really dealing with the sickest of the sick patients. The majority of our patients are pregnant. They're still at risk for getting it. Luckily, our patients that have gotten sick have gotten very mild disease, but we're in a different scenario because our job can't stop. Other practices are not doing routine surgeries or procedures. We can't stop pregnancies. People are going to come in labor and deliver. So our role in the last couple of weeks has sort of been, how do we maximize their safety? From the hospital perspective, how do you keep people safe during and after the delivery? And then for us in the office, how do we decrease everyone's exposures?
Mm-hmm.
The big thing right now across the country is shelter in place, avoiding going out when you can. So we have women where we're usually telling them in a pregnancy, you come in every 4 weeks, every 2 weeks, every week. We've had to sort of step back and reevaluate all of that. Like, are these visits truly necessary? Are there ways to do some of this at home?
Mm-hmm. We
have a good number of women getting blood pressure cuffs at home and then alternating visits where we'll do a teleconference with them 1 week where they check their blood pressure and we sort of check in and see how they're feeling. And then 2 weeks later, they'll come into the office.
So then let me ask you this. If somebody comes in who's pregnant with coronavirus or tests positive for coronavirus, are you guys the ones that send them to the actual hospital, or because your specialty is that you have to take care of them there?
So we're not seeing that. Just to take a step back, one of the things we're doing in the office is the day before a visit, one of the doctors is calling every single patient coming in just to check in, see how you're feeling. You feeling anything out of the ordinary? Have you been around anyone who's sick? And doing what I think is an excellent job of trying to keep people out of the office if they're sick.
Mm-hmm.
we've had people with symptoms call in and ask us what to do. We give them general guidelines in terms of staying home for a certain number of days, taking Tylenol if you're having a fever, and then our recommendation is if you're having trouble breathing, if you're short of breath, having significant chest pain, to go into an emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
When that's happened, we're not the ones managing them primarily. We're available mainly as a consultant in terms of obstetric care. How do we monitor the baby? How many weeks are they? We haven't had to deal with this yet, but other people have. Somebody who's far enough along in the pregnancy where they're actually being delivered, to help them just in terms of respiratory support.
When you come into work, how does it begin with something like this that we're going through?
So a couple of weeks ago, let me kind of go back to what we've been doing. We all sort of, like I said, looked at our visit schedule. What can we cut back on? What can we not cut back on?
Mm-hmm.
Canceling certain routine appointments, trying to space things out as best as we could. On a day-to-day basis, we're meeting twice a week by phone to kind of go over what's changed in the last day. We're in a private practice, so we deliver at a hospital, but we're not directly part of the administration. So we're getting updates from them constantly in terms of what's changed at the hospital, because then those are guidelines that we have to follow.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have a couple of questions because some people were asking when I said I was going to interview an OBGYN during this time. If you are pregnant right now, are all the precautions that people say we need to do, the washing of the hands, the gloves, the mask, is that okay if you're going to go out, or should you really stay in? I mean, are you at any more of a risk being pregnant?
It's been interesting lately. Normally when someone's pregnant and they get sick, they tend to get sicker and be sick longer. Mm-hmm. We're not really seeing that with Corona right now, but I'm still telling all my patients, stay inside as much as you can, avoid unnecessary travel or trips outside. And then when you do, hand hygiene is the biggest thing. You can't wash your hands enough. Be very cautious about touching something else and touching your face, because that's typically how people get sick. Mm-hmm. And it's things you don't even realize. You want to go out and go for a walk in the park, and you don't realize that you're touching the elevator button, and you're touching the door, right. And then you get outside, you forget to pure out your hands, mm-hmm. and then the sun is out, your eyes get a little blurry, and you rub your face, and you don't realize
how much you touch your face. I mean, I was talking to somebody about it the other day, pregnant or not pregnant. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was rubbing my eyes and going like this on my nose, and you're not cognizant of it. You just don't realize it until now when everybody's pointing it out. So let me ask you this then. Where do you think we go from here, just from a medical standpoint? Do you think when things start to flatten out, which we're already seeing some hopeful signs? I mean, it's only been a couple of days, but there are some statistics saying that we're starting to see the curve flatten out. Do you see us going back to people shaking hands, or do you think that maybe, I know Dr. Fauci brought up an interesting point the other day, saying that we may not go back as a society to having handshaking as an acceptable greeting?
I saw that. I've sort of now given up trying to figure out where we're going to go. Right when all this started, I had a vacation planned with my husband that we canceled. It was before they had issued any kind of restrictions, but we just sort of looked at what was happening, said, we don't feel comfortable getting on a plane right now. Right. I had another trip planned later this month that's obviously being canceled. There's a part of me that's like, we don't even know when we're going to be able to travel again. You mentioned starting to see hopeful signs, and we're starting to hear reports of that in New York, where now it seems like they're not seeing as many new patients with COVID symptoms coming into the hospital. So it seems like we're starting to flatten the curve a little bit. Statistically, I think it always takes a couple days for it to pan out if it's a true change or not. Mm-hmm. But I think it's going to really be hard to go back to normal that quickly. There's a lot of people I know that have not, like you said, leaving your house, going out for minimal things. but that's still a large percent of the population. So you're still risking a really big spike in people getting sick as, everyone kind of goes out all at once.
They say it's 21 days to form a habit, kind of. I mean, in that range. We've been doing this now for, it seems like forever, but it's been about that time. So it's almost like we're used to staying sheltered in. And I feel like, it's almost like when the bears emerge from hibernation, when things start to open up back up again, are we all going to be rushing out like we post that we're going to do on social media? Or are we going to be kind of afraid and super cautious and even a little paranoid when things start to hopefully return back to normal again?
I don't know. I mean, there's people who can't wait for the gym to reopen, to get out, to become active, to get on a plane and go travel. And then I think you're going to have another group of people that, even if they're given the all clear, are going to be worried or really not going to want to come in. We have a lot of patients that are immunosuppressed, where they're really at risk of developing serious symptoms. And they've literally put their lives on hold. And they say they don't know. They're not going to know how to trust any recommendation that they can go back out again.
Right. I mean, it's to imagine right now flipping a switch and going back to the way things were, knowing what we know, what's out there. It's almost unimaginable that we would go back for any reasonable amount of time from now till whenever without extra precautions. Or, something interesting I read too, or maybe I've seen it on TV, where they are talking about getting your temperature taken or rapid tests as you walk into public places and kids into schools. I mean, that could be a reality.
That would be wonderful if it could happen. I mean, we have rapid tests for things like strep throat. That's not nearly as contagious,
right.
But, a pediatrician with that information, it can really help them determine quickly who to treat, who not to treat. If there was readily available rapid testing, if the accuracy of testing was better, if we had good immunity testing, all of those things could help. I'm hearing a lot of promising things in the medical field about those tests being developed, being refined, being rolled out on larger scale use. But unfortunately, we're not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, we hopefully will have a shorter amount of time to go, but I don't know. I mean, we just got to just be safe and do everything that the doctors tell us to, of course. And it is nice that we are seeing at least a little bit of the flattening. We'll, cross our fingers and hopefully by the time everybody hears this, it's even on the down a little bit more. So we'll have to see. Melka, thank you so much. Before we let you go, because this is episode 1 and everything's sort of a test. So you're kind of like the test lab rat or guinea pig. Hate to call you that, but we'll see what works and what doesn't work. But rapid fire is coming up next. So first quick question is, what is the first thing you plan on doing when life returns to normal?
I'm probably going to go backpacking somewhere, someplace that I can not just turn off my phone, but leave my phone behind because it won't work, and just live in the woods for a couple days and not have to be constantly checking emails and checking in with people and coming up with new guidelines and, kind of turn my brain off for a little bit.
Kind of get away from everything that's been going on and kind of be one with nature.
Yeah. I was talking about with one of my partners, we're seeing fewer patients, but we also feel like this is the busiest month of our life. We've done more this last month than I have, and I don't even know how long. And
with the constant news cycle, it doesn't help that every day feels like a week. So, and that's for pretty much everybody. Yeah. Okay. Next question. Is there a show? I know you're busy, but has there been a show that you've been binging or watching during this time?
I'm not binging anything lately, but I do watch Better Call Saul, and now it's the only time that I've, for the most part, been able to watch it live. Normally I'm up early in the morning, I'm home late, but things, especially with the commute, have eased up a little bit. So for once, I'm able to stay up a little bit later on a Monday night and sleep in a little bit later on Tuesday.
Right. Okay. Have you watched Tiger King yet?
I have not.
You have not. Okay. I can't guarantee that by the time people watch or listen to this that I haven't. But right now I haven't. So we'll see. We'll see if I end up changing. I'm one of those people that gets stubborn though. Like people will talk about something. Oh, you got to watch it, and that causes me to not want to watch it more.
Just not want to be a part of it.
Exactly. And then I did that with Game of Thrones, and then I was really obsessed with it. And I think I told you the other day when we were talking before this that I was binging Game of Thrones, and I had to do the 6 o'clock news and then the 10 o'clock news. And I went home in between because I lived close to the station. This was when I lived in Memphis, and I watched the Red Wedding episode, and then had to go back and do. Then I had to go back and do the weather, and I couldn't even think. I couldn't concentrate. It wasn't good.
I'm impressed you kept it secret for that long. You know, like a lot of people I know out there don't watch Game of Thrones, but they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram,
Right.
They see enough of these things to like know about, something bad's going to happen in that episode.
I didn't. You know what it is though. I didn't pay attention, and maybe I saw people that were posting. You know, oh my God, the Red Wedding. When did it take place? Whatever, 2014, 2015. It just because I was so not into the show, it just went in one ear out the other, or whatever it was. But yeah, interesting. Okay, last question. Something non-work related that you've been doing different since this whole thing started.
Getting a lot more time outside in the front yard with my family. My 2-year-old likes pulling weeds out of the garden.
That's helpful.
She goes pull weeds. And again, normally we're home late, we're up early, we don't have that time. But now, living in the suburbs, we have a yard, we have space from other people, and we can just like sit in the front yard for like a half an hour every day.
So a little bit more time with family. Yeah. Okay. So there's obviously no positive on what we're going through, but there are some nice after effects, I guess you can say, on family, things like that. Listen, Melka, before we go, let's talk about your practices podcast, because you guys have one too.
Yes. My partner, Nady Fox, had started a podcast called Healthful Woman, sorry. He sort of designed it to kind of just talk with experts in the field about a variety of women's health issues. And right around when coronavirus was starting, we had sort of said, like, we should, kind of talk about it a little bit. We're OBGYNs in New York. We're dealing with it more often than anybody. And again, we have that different perspective where our jobs can't stop. So he's done a few episodes on it. I think it's worth checking out.
Very cool. And we're going to put it up there on the screen for you too. So people that are watching will have a link and all that stuff when this is posted on YouTube and on Facebook or wherever else I may end up putting the video. IGTV, we'll see. Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you.
Listen, Melka, thank you so much. And by the way, you allowed me to call you Melka. You are Dr. Stephanie Melka, OBGYN, but that's what we'll call you for this. So no disrespect for anybody that's watching and say, why aren't you calling her by her proper title? Listen, I do appreciate you not only joining me, but being that first guest that I have on here. I wanted to start something off that was a little bit more relevant to what is going on right now. These will become a little bit more fun in some cases, things that don't have to do with coronavirus. But I just thought right now, everybody has this on their mind. And to talk to somebody who's got, I think, a unique perspective on it, because you are working as a doctor, not directly with it, but you got to keep your guard up because that's something that you could be working with, and hopefully not. But so far right now, it seems like you are handling things, and let's just hope things continue to improve and we get back to somewhat normal conditions sooner than later. All right, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, that is episode 1 of the podcast, Just Press Pause. Remember to click on my Facebook, my Instagram, my Twitter. I have a Snapchat, and this will be on YouTube, all handled at Andrew Kozak TV. Stay tuned for episode 2. That's coming up. You guys have a great day, and thanks for joining.